Welcome to Biohacking with Brittany, where we explore cutting edge health and wellness topics. I am your host, Brittany Ford, and I am thrilled that you are listening today. This episode was really fun. I got to actually sit down and chat with Alexandria DeVito, and she specializes in fertility and preconception health, which is one of the most topics I am passionate about. We got to really dive into why 9 months is not enough, what you can do pre-pregnancy in order to optimize your health and optimize your baby's health. And so it was really awesome to talk to somebody else who gets it and who is as passionate about this topic as I am, because preconception health is seriously not a talked about enough topic yet. It's very taboo. People don't understand. And so we dove into that today. We talk about epigenetics. We talk about generational health, how your health as a mom or dad even impacts your kids, but also impacts their kids and on and on. And so it was really cool to just kind of go through this and talk it out. And I learned a lot from her. We talked about enhancing fertility, approaches to fertility, reproductive anxiety, which is something that I haven't thought about before. And we frame that and what that looks like, fertility after the age of 35, and, IVF. And we talk about stress and nutrition and a bunch of different things, and how you can get tested and really take a look at your preconception health and fertility prior to. So she has a company called Poplin, and that does a bunch of testing for you. And we dive into that. So there's so much to unpack here. It was one of my favorite episodes to record probably in the last few months. As I'm just very passionate about this topic, and I did a lot of preconception prep myself, like over a year's worth. And this is all in my course, my baby steps course, but everything from acupuncture to nutrition to supplements to getting my husband to do a cleanse/detox for 3 months with me, my baby steps program we both did, and then getting pregnant on the first try and all these things. So we did a lot, and I am very passionate about it. And that's why I built my course. So you can always sign up for my course and join our community. I would love that. And enjoy this episode. But before we dive in, let's do DM of the day. I feel like such a radio talk show host when I do this, but this person wrote in and says, "Hi, I just finished listening to your latest podcast episode on optimizing sleep, and it really resonated with me. I've struggled with insomnia for years, and your tips on creating a sleep-friendly environment and establishing a bedtime routine were helpful. I've started implementing some of your strategies, like reducing screen time before bed and using blackout curtains." Yes, good job. "And I'm already noticing improvements in my sleep quality." Yay, that's awesome. "I wanted to ask if you have any additional advice specifically for managing sleep disturbances, like waking up frequently during the night. Your insights have been invaluable. Blah, blah, blah. Thank you so much." Okay. So specifically for managing sleep disturbances, like waking up frequently during the night. Okay, I think you're doing a lot. I think you're doing amazing already. So good job optimizing your sleep environment. That is key. With the waking up multiple times throughout the night, that is like basically my life right now. So I understand. However, I would really think about why that might be happening. And a couple things that come to mind off the bat is, when is your last meal? And what are you eating for dinner? Like, what is it? Is it very high in carbohydrates? Is it processed food? Is it really close to your bedtime? Because I wonder if you are experiencing a blood sugar drop that is then waking you up in the night. That would be my first thing. So if that kind of sounds like you, like maybe you eat at 8:30 and you go to bed at 9, something like that, I would try to eat about an hour to 2 hours before you go to bed, if you can, and then sit in bed and read and kind of extend that window before you actually go to sleep, which is what I do. And then I would make sure that your dinner is balanced. So what do we mean by balance? Is basically like there has to be enough protein and fat in there to balance out the carbohydrates. So think about the oils that you cook with. adding things like fish, avocado, nuts, coconut oil, that type of thing, like just really adding some healthy fats in there. And then same with protein. Like, are you getting enough protein? I've really increased my protein in the last few months. So think about the protein that you're putting on your plate. Is it enough for you, for your body size, for your workouts, for your activity levels, etc.? So really, really pay attention to how much protein you are putting in your body. This helps balance your blood sugar. So even if you have a higher carbohydrate meal, like say there's, sweet potato in there, pasta, I don't know, whatever you're eating, when you're adding in these healthy fats and protein, it really helps to balance out that blood sugar, which is then going to reduce the chance of a spike and a drop that can then wake you up later at night. So that is what I would think of when I think of nutrition. The other thing that I would try is magnesium. So magnesium I take before bed. I take the one by Bioptimizers because I think it's the best on the market. It has all 7 types of magnesium in it. Like, it's the best. I've taken it for over 2 years. So I would start to try to take magnesium throughout before you go to bed. Just try 1 capsule in the beginning. I've taken 2, especially when I'm going through stressful periods of time. And I think this is a good idea because it also could be stress related, it could be cortisol related. You could be experiencing a cortisol spike in the middle of the night that's waking you up multiple times. So I would try to kind of reduce that and reduce stress through something like magnesium. The other thing it could be is, which is like such a simple fix, is if you're drinking too much water close to bedtime, which is making you get up to go and pee in the middle of the night. Now, you didn't necessarily say that in your DM, but if that is what is happening to you, stop all liquids an hour before you go to bed, at least. And like kind of experiment with that timeline that works for you. This is going to be different for everybody, but that's kind of where I would start. Think about your liquids, nutrition, and adding some magnesium in and see what that does. Continue to have no screen time before bed. We really want your melatonin to be at like a healthy level, and continue to like biohack your environment as well. Blackout curtains, good job. Those are great. Sounds like you're doing all of the right things. You just need a little extra support. And a shout out to Wellness, which is the company by Katie Wells. She is the wellness mama. That's how we all know her and love her for. So Wellness is a really cool company. They have a bunch of like self-care products. I love their toothpastes. Okay. They have a kid's toothpaste for all the mama and daddas listening out there, but it's all natural. And I actually trust her brand and her company. I think I have tried every single natural toothpaste on the market. I think about all the ones that I've bought at the grocery store, and you have to be careful. Unfortunately, you have to be careful because these small brands that are like all natural are a lot of the time actually owned by bigger brands. And there can be a lot of like greenwashing in these products, right? Like they throw on the label 100% natural or all natural. And these are terms that are actually not regulated and trick you into thinking like, oh yeah, this is good for my teeth. When in reality, it actually has these other things added to it. And, Coca-Cola actually owns this company. So just be careful, do some research when you're buying your self-care products if you can. Nice thing about this from Wellness is that you don't have to worry about that. It's Katie Wells. Of course we trust her. So I use her toothpaste and I will forever use her toothpaste. I have every single flavor. And if you use my discount code biohackingbrittany, you get 12% off all of her products. So she's an online store. I mean, everyone has an online store these days. So check those out. The toothpastes are the best sellers from her. I haven't tried any of the other products, but I might because I really want to I kind of want to try all of them. So take a look at that and enjoy. And a shout out to Mimeo. My gosh, I love Mimeo and I love everything that they're doing over there. This is a supplement that has 4 different ingredients in it: PEA, OEA, spermidine, and NMN, brain. These are ingredients that are designed to mimic a 36-hour fast in the body. So for someone like me who's not fasting right now, taking Mimeo really gives me a peace of mind that I'm supporting my cellular health. I'm getting the benefits of fasting without actually having to fully fast. Very cool. I just heard Ben Greenfield actually talking about them on his show. I've loved Mimeo since last year. They were, I found two new biohacking companies last year, Mimeo and Fatty 15, two very different supplements. And they were the top of my list because I just think they're both doing incredible things in the space. So shout out to Mimeo. You can use my discount code biohackingbrittany and you can save, which we love. Enjoy this podcast episode for all the girlies and the men out there and everyone who's interested in fertility and preconception health. You're going to get a lot out of it. I really, really encourage you to join my program if you're interested in this. It changed my life. It tripled my husband's sperm count. It's very important if you want to optimize your preconception health and fertility. I actually might be speaking on this at a conference in the biohacking space next year. So stay tuned, everybody. That might be happening. Thank you for listening, and I will catch you soon for another episode. Welcome to Biohacking with Brittany. I am so excited that you are listening to the podcast today. Today, we get to dive into one of my absolute favorite subjects, which is preconception health. And all of you listening know that I recently put out my baby steps course, which is all about this. But I have an expert on the show with me, joining me today, Alexandria DeVito. And she is a renowned functional nutritionist specializing in fertility and preconception health. She has a book called 9 Months is Not Enough, the ultimate pregnancy checklist to create a baby-ready body and build generational health, which is very interesting. And she's the founder and CEO of Poplin, the first pre-pregnancy wellness company, which is so cool. We're going to dive into that as well. So lots to talk about today. Alexandria, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor. And it was so wonderful to hear about your own journey. And I'm so glad we get to kind of nerd out on this topic that we both love so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get into all of the amazing things that you are doing in this space, I would love to know, why preconception? Was this something personal for you, or how did you get to this point?
Yeah, I never would have expected this. So I didn't anticipate it when I started the journey. So I actually started, working on the corporate side for many years. I was a consultant and I focused on healthcare. So worked with a lot of pharma, med device companies. And then I felt like I really enjoy doing healthcare work. It's just so impactful. And I felt like I wanted to switch from something that was a bit more reactive to more proactive. So that was the impetus to go back to school. I went and got my MBA, and then I did part-time master's in nutrition on the side. And then I left after I finished both those master's degrees. I left the corporate world, moved into the clinical side, started working as a nutritionist, did training in functional medicine, kind of went really deep. And that was when actually this whole fertility thing started for me, because I had a lot of clients that were coming to me that were struggling to conceive. And the same thing was happening with friends. Friends were coming to me asking for my advice and guidance as they were preparing to conceive. And I was really struck by that, because they had, no answers. They weren't able to conceive and they had no idea why. And so I, was really, really fascinated by this and started diving into a lot of the literature to try to understand what could be going on, right? Why could they be struggling? And so I really was, and, as a type A individual, I was also kind of like, why are we waiting until someone is struggling to conceive to try to figure all this out? And so, fast forward, I basically started running really broad tests on my clients based on the clinical literature that I was seeing. And I started flagging issues that their providers had never even looked at. And once we were able to address them, largely through diet and lifestyle and supplementation, sometimes medications and procedures in collaboration with their doctor, they were able to get pregnant. And, I had this insight, which was, wait a minute, why are we waiting until someone is struggling for a year or 2 years or 3 years? And, these processes oftentimes can be physically, emotionally, financially draining. And, is it possible that it might not have to be that way? Is it possible that there is another way to be approaching this? And that's when I realized that there are preconception guidelines, and there have been preconception guidelines for, decades, and nobody's following them. Nobody even knows about them. And so that's when I realized, wait a minute, how do we encourage people to prepare to get pregnant like they prepare for a wedding or any other major milestone, a year in advance with guidance and tools and support? And so that was really kind of what prompted me to start the whole journey, build the business, write the book is, I just felt like there was an opportunity to really rewrite the entire narrative around getting pregnant and how we can cultivate health for future generations as well.
I love that. I just think that's so insightful and helpful. And I went through something very, very like similar when my husband and when I first had this idea of like preconception health, when I started talking to people about it, like friends and family, people kind of thought I was a little like neurotic or obsessive or, oh, it's unnecessary. And the conversation honestly was always like, why don't you just start trying and see what happens every single time, And then other people, like I remember I was out with my friends and this couple, and the guy turned to his friend, my girlfriend, who's a good friend of mine. And he was like, oh, should we do like some sort of like preconception cleanse? She's like, no, I don't think we need to. Like, whatever, we'll just start trying, And people have that narrative. And so when you flip that, people, they just don't get it. Like, they don't understand why it's important. So when people bring you that or you hear that conversation, like, what do you usually say or recommend?
So I think there's a couple of things. So I think the first thing is, this is a behavior that we actually follow in other areas of our life. And it's not a foreign behavior. It's just not yet being applied to getting pregnant, right? Like we prepare for a career far in advance. We prepare to get married. The average time that people prepare to get married is 15 months. And the average amount of time, the money that people are spending is, I think the average wedding is like $33,000, right? And if you think about that, right, I thought it was so interesting, especially because a lot of times these milestones are juxtaposed near one another, right? They don't have to be, but right, you have this period of time where you're getting married and you're planning and there's all this guidance and tools and support. And then you go to get pregnant and it's like crickets, like there's nothing and no one. And so, I think it's just really interesting. And I think we've been moved into this phase where it's not traditional to prepare to conceive. But historically, if we look at a lot of tribes and tribal cultures and, even a lot of, other places outside even of the US, there is a culture of preparing to conceive. And I think we've just forgotten that. So I think it's helpful to remind people that this is how, we prepared for generations and generations. And I think, secondarily, it sometimes helps to relate it to other things. Like I think, most people wouldn't roll up to a marathon not having prepared, right? And when we think about the impact of pregnancy on the body, it's like running back to back to back marathons, right? In terms of the physical demands on the body. So I think when you start to contextualize it in that way, it starts to make a little bit more sense. And I think the other thing I would say here is just I rely a lot on data because I think fertility and pregnancy has not historically been very data driven. And, what the data is suggesting is that we've made, a lot of the organizations, so like the ACOG and the CDC have said that we've made the strides that we can make in the prenatal period. And if we want to see better outcomes for pregnancy and birth, we actually have to move earlier, which means to the health of both reproductive partners before couples conceive.
Yep. I found the same thing when I was doing the research for my course and like when I was helping clients. It's interesting. And again, like I just went through it. So I know so personally, like looking online and trying to find something and trying to find some sort of book or program or something that could say, hey, like here's how to optimize your health before you start trying to conceive. There really wasn't a lot. And that was not that long ago. Like that was like a year and a half ago. What I found the narrative was very reactive, kind of like what you were saying of, I find preconception is let's be preventative and proactive, and fertility is almost reactive. Like I'm having fertility problems, right? So then it's like, okay, so you've been trying to conceive for 6 months or a year and it's not working. Okay, what are we going to do? Okay, maybe now you start trying to be healthier, or maybe you go and just do IVF right away. And I was like, oh, I really don't I don't want to be in that position. What can I do right now so that I don't even have to go down that road in the future? And that's how I try to explain it to people of like, let's just get you as healthy as we can right now, like both you and your partner, so that we don't have to open that door to infertility. Like you might not even need to ever think about that because you have spent so many months right now optimizing your health, and you guys, and it shows in the data, it shows in your biomarkers when you're getting tested. So it is like there is quite a lot of education behind it, but I think it is slowly kind of getting better in the mainstream, I guess.
I think so too. I think the tide is shifting, and I think it's, through efforts like yours and certainly, what we're doing. I think the more voices that are talking about a new way of being, right? I think sometimes you have to be offered a possibility before you can step into that. And so if you don't have examples around you of other people who've done things, whether that's in fitness or, in health or in career, right? Like seeing what else is possible, what else is on the menu, I think is really important. And so that's, I think a big part of these conversations is showing people what the other options are. And I think you make a really good point because, I have observed this too. To me, fertility is a subset of preconception, but not the other way around, right? And I think oftentimes when we think about fertility, it's a binary thing, right? Did I get pregnant or did I not get pregnant? And, that's one piece of the puzzle. But, preconception is about, not only getting pregnant, but also the health of that pregnancy and baby. And so, right, when I think about the efforts that you make in preconception, it goes to a lot of what you're saying. It's not, it does two main things, right? One is not only does it help to increase the probability of being able to get pregnant, but it also increases the likelihood of a healthy pregnancy and baby. And so I think that's the part that is not talked about enough as well, right? Because, if people are able to get pregnant, but not sustain that pregnancy or not have a healthy pregnancy, I don't think we've achieved our goals, right? It's not just the binary, yes, I got pregnant. It's, most people are trying to achieve a healthy pregnancy with a healthy baby. And so when we think about preconception and that broader framing, then we can start to make interventions with that goal in mind.
Let's talk about Mimeo, a breakthrough longevity supplement that hacks your biology to help you look and feel younger. It was created by PhDs in nutrition from over 7 years of clinical research, and Mimeo was designed to mimic the longevity benefits of fasting in a simple daily pill. Not only has Mimeo been shown to extend lifespan in animals by 96%, but users have been able to take as much as 2.5 years off their biological age in just 8 weeks. How? Mimeo's groundbreaking biomimetic formula uses a patented blend of all natural metabolites that work together to help your cellular health from the inside out. First, there's OEA, which is a metabolic supercharger clinically proven to help control appetite and promote fat metabolism, so you can crush those cravings and silence food noise throughout the day. Then there's spermidine, the cellular autophagy activator, helping clear out cellular junk to boost cognition, clear brain fog, and refresh your cells. Next, there's nicotinamide, a broad-spectrum NAD+ booster that's been shown to improve everything from metabolism to skin glow to immune health. And lastly, there's PEA, one of the body's most powerful rest and repair molecules that helps control inflammation, relieve discomfort, and enhance recovery so you can get that youthful energy back. Mimeo is designed to work like a super fast, super efficient fasting diet, but without actually having to fast. It's all about tapping into the power of your own biology, giving your body the cheat code to work its best, making you feel younger and healthier today. You can try Mimeo today. Use my discount code at checkout, which is biohackingbrittany, and you can get all of these benefits in a simple supplement today. Again, that's biohackingbrittany in all capitals. So definitely try it and let me know what you think. Yeah, I think you're spot on. And there is research that backs that up. Like there is research that shows like to reduce the chance of miscarriage, you can look at different nutrient levels. You can look at diet, like women who choose to not drink alcohol or, smoke or whatever the thing is that you're looking at. There is research that looks at all of these things and how it impacts miscarriages and even other health complications during pregnancy. So there's a lot that goes into it. And I'm really glad that you kind of focus on that through the work that you do. So if someone's listening to this, and I know what I would recommend, but if someone is listening to this and so say they're wanting to start to try to conceive for the first time in the next year and their health is like generally decent, them and their partner, maybe they drink on weekends and maybe their diet is healthy, let's say like, 60% of the time, and they go to the gym, like just kind of like average. What would you say would be the best thing for them to do right now if they were going to start to try in about a year?
So I would probably say two things. The first thing I would say is to invite your reproductive partner into a conversation about intentional conception, right? I think a lot of times we put fertility on the shoulders of the female reproductive partner, but biology does not care about our cultural construct that fertility is a female problem, right? It is literally a 50-50 biological equation. And I think so often, and that's why I was, so encouraged to hear, kind of how you approached your own fertility journey. I think a lot of times we leave our male reproductive partners out of the conversation. And they, I've spoken to a lot of men on the journey at this point, and they want to be part of it. They just don't know what the heck to do. And so I think really inviting them into the conversation and letting them know how important they are in the process, and that basically anything that you can do, they can also do in this process, because, a lot of the things that accrue to egg health and egg quality will also accrue to sperm health and quality. So I think that's the first thing, is just getting aligned on, your timelines and your goals and what you want this to look like, and, what the preparation process can be together, because it's certainly a lot easier to adopt new behaviors and new products into the house. And, I'm sure we'll talk about this, right? If you have a reproductive partner who's on board with you. So I'd say that's the first thing. And then the second thing, I will acknowledge, I'm highly biased here. So everyone needs to take kind of what I'm going to say with a grain of salt, but I'm a really big fan of testing, because I think that especially right now, there's, this kind of narrative around age is the biggest predictor of fertility. And, once you turn, take your pick, 30, 35, you turn into a pumpkin. So sad for you. Right. And right. It's bananas. And the data does not support this. And so I think especially, right, if you happen to be older in years and you're getting pregnant, or if you're younger and you want to know where you are, like, I think data is our friends here, where you actually can understand what's happening. And I've done enough testing myself to understand that the inputs don't always match the outputs. And so it's really helpful, right? To your point, like if you're exercising regularly and you're, moderating your sugar intake or your alcohol intake, let's see, is your body reflecting those changes, right? And so I think it can be really helpful to run tests. And right. And I don't just mean egg quantity tests for the females listening. I mean, right, fertility is an extension of your overall health. So when I'm talking about testing, I'm talking about 5 different categories of testing, right? Your blood status, your hormone status, your metabolic status, your nutrient status, your immune status. All of these things can affect fertility. And there you can have a sense of what you're working with and whether there are any red flags or yellow flags that could interfere not only with your ability to get pregnant, but also the health of that pregnancy. And you can do this on both the male and the female side. And then you know what you're working with, and you can be much more targeted in your interventions rather than doing all the things and, crossing your fingers and hoping that they will materialize.
So smart. I love it. And as a biohacker, I'm all about testing. Test, don't guess. I think there's so much power in our data and in our biomarkers and feedback and everything like that. So I definitely agree with you there. I want to touch on the male aspect of this, because a question I get a lot is, how did your husband handle this? Like, what did he say to you? Did you get pushback when people interview me? And I always tell them he was so on board, because what he said to me was, okay, you want me to do this 90-day cleanse? And he's like, if I have to do this for 90 days so that you have a healthier pregnancy for 9 months and we have a healthier baby for the baby's life, then of course I'm going to do it. That's like a drop in the bucket for me to do. And so it's just for those people out there who are thinking about these types of conversations, it's that type of narrative of like, this is such a small thing to commit to for the longevity of mom and baby and their health. And it's, it's such a bigger picture than just that time that you're trying to be like super duper healthy. And the other thing too, I don't know if it's increased, but the last I read was that male infertility relates to about 30% of all infertility cases. And that number is increasing. And that is actually significant. So it's not just like, you never hear about it, like men's sperm is fine. That's not what's happening here. Like men's testosterone levels are decreasing, and so are their sperm quantities. And so there's actually a lot going on there. And again, I'm rambling here, but when I educate people on this, I tell them like men make new sperm every single day. Every single day. So think about that. Like you have so much control on how healthy that sperm is, because you make new ones and then, it comes out about 90 days later. So think about like taking all the nutrients, your food, your exercise, like heat exposure, all these things, and like, let's optimize it. So like the little sperm that you're making today, when it comes out in 3 months, is actually like really, really great, strong sperm,
Oh my gosh. Yes. I mean, as we want as superhero sperm as we can possibly get. Right. And I think, like, and by the way, like, I think this is a lever, right? To the ladies listening, right? To the females that are listening, and thinking about influencing your partners, right? Like, I think, most men want to have virility. Most men want to have superhero sperm. So like, right. I think, having that conversation with them and supporting them in the ways that they can do that, right? I think that can be really helpful. And I think also, to what you're saying, right? Talking to your partner in such a beautiful way where, he's contributing to the future of your family. I think men, again, have been left out of that conversation, and they're incredibly important. And as you said, right, sperm counts have dropped 60% in the last 40 years, 60. It's wild. And testosterone has dropped. And yeah, it's 1/3 female for infertility. For infertility, it's 1/3 female factor, 1/3 male factor, 1/3 combined factor. Right. So basically, it's half and half in terms of, contribution, in terms of, what is happening. And so inviting our male partners into this conversation and giving them things that they can do. And I mean, literally physiologically, right? Because the female partner is going to be carrying the baby, but if we think about the male contribution, literally his one shot epigenetically is what he's contributing with his sperm at the point of conception. So like, that is the moment. And so what he is doing in the 3, 6, 12 months prior to that moment is what is cultivating the contribution he is going to make to your future child from a scientific standpoint, from an epigenetic standpoint.
Exactly. Yep. That's exactly spot on. So, I mean, really there is so much that men can do. Going back to testing, I'm doing this advanced fertility functional medicine course right now. And it's really great. It's out of the school, out of the UK. And one of the chapters that they were talking about was reproductive aging. And reproductive, I forgot what they called it, but like you can test your reproductive age. And I thought this was so interesting. So I don't know if you've seen that, biological age testing is so popular now. And we're doing these tests that like look at our cells and say, okay, on a cellular level, you're this age. So there's like ones for like gut health or blood biomarkers. I've done a bunch of them. And it's funny because they all kind of say different things. So I'm like, oh, my gut is this age and like my inflammation is this age and things like that. But they're talking about it in this book of like, there's a way to do it for your reproductive age of like, let's test your reproductive cells. Like, I guess it might be a swab. I don't know what it would be, and let's actually look at your cells and say, okay, like, I actually think, maybe you're 40, but you're super healthy. And so your cells down there are, I don't know, 35, 33 or anything like that. So have you heard of this idea of like reproductive cellular age testing, or is this like something new?
So yes and no. I'm not sure if I know about the specific test that you're referring to, but I think the concept is actually like one of the ones that inspired me building Poplan, which is the testing company that we have, which is, I was inspired because when I was doing my functional medicine training, a lot of these platforms were coming out that was talking about biological age and chronological age, right? The difference in someone's, years on Earth versus the vitality of their cells. And they were creating a whole bunch of proxies around, kind of what someone's biological age is. And now there's a whole bunch of other ones that, different biological clocks. But the idea back then is that you could use a proxy of tests to understand what someone's rough, vitality was. And so my observation from that is, well, like presumably you could do the same thing for reproductive health, right? Why the methodology should apply, right? So what are the things that we know that can affect egg health, for example, and sperm health? And so that's largely how I designed our testing, right? So we know, for example, that inflammation can affect egg quality. We know that oxidative stress can affect it. We know nutrient deficiencies can affect it. So if we can have a sense for all of those different factors, then, we can create these, different algorithms to understand, kind of what a egg quality proxy would be as an example, right? And I think that's, similar to kind of reproductive age. So Yeah, I think there's so much more to go. And I'm really passionate about building new fertility data sets because as we were talking about, right, infertility today, all 30-year-olds are created equal, all 35-year-olds are created equal, all 40-year-olds are created equal. But cellularly, we know that is not true. And if you cover up someone's chronological age, you likely may not be able to guess what their actual age is based on their test results. Because I've seen, 25-year-olds look 40 cellularly and vice versa. So I think, we're entering a really exciting new phase where we can start to use your own biological data to give us proxies for egg health because we can't measure it directly. And by extension, kind of reproductive health or reproductive age. And I'm fascinated by all the new science that's coming out and additional tests besides that. Would love to learn.
If you're feeling out of sync with your hormones or struggling with fertility, I totally get it. I've been there and it can be so frustrating, but I found a delicious way to support your reproductive health. I have developed hormone balancing, fertility boosting chocolate. This isn't just any type of chocolate. It's packed with adaptogens like maca root and antioxidants from cacao and pomegranate. These ingredients can help regulate your hormones and support your preconception health and fertility. You need to download this recipe ASAP, okay? Because it's more than just a treat, it's a powerful way to nourish your body from the inside out. Imagine indulging in a rich, delicious chocolate that not only satisfies your sweet tooth, but also boosts your wellness. Whether you're trying to conceive, balance your hormones, or just crave a healthy indulgence that you get to make from home, where you get to control all of the ingredients and also optimize your health, this recipe is perfect for you. Don't miss out on this tasty, fertility enhancing, optimizing health solution. You can go to biohackingbrittany.com/pages/fertility-chocolate and download the recipe for free right now. Go for it. It's just right there waiting for you. It's linked in my show notes. It's linked on my website. You're going to find it super, super easy. So treat yourself to better health, one delicious bite at a time. Yeah, that's really smart. It's almost like, yeah, and I've seen it done in the way that you're talking about as well, of like, let's take multiple biomarkers and calculate an age based off of it, based off of all of the other data that we have and compare it and things like that. So it would be so interesting if you were to do that with your tests at Poplin and say, okay, we just tested for 70 different biomarkers based on the science of what we know, we think your reproductive age might be around this, like say it's like, I don't know, 35, whatever it is. And then you would give recommendations or do a course or do the recommendations in your book and then come back and test and see what it is. Like that is what I would love to see because numbers really work with people. Like people love to see, okay, I'm at point A and now I'm going to do all these things and I want to be at point B. And then you retest and it's like, wow, like it dropped to 33 or 31. And, so eating healthier did make a difference, right? Like the proof was kind of in the pudding. That's what I would love to see. My husband and I, we kind of did that on our own, but nothing to that extent of like, here's roughly what your reproductive age might be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're onto something, Brittany. Stay tuned. We're working on it, right? I think, when you're building new data sets, I have a pretty high bar for kind of the amount of data that we need and, to draw some conclusions. But there is some exciting stuff in the pike. And I think exactly what you're talking about, right? There is a way to quantify things in a more thoughtful way than I think we have been and to demonstrate kind of what you can do. And I think the other thing is, giving people practical things to do, right? Everything that we test for is modifiable except for blood type, right? And so rather than looking at tests that give you information back and you can't do anything about it, I think it is really important to give people a tracking mechanism and then B, things that they can do to actually move the needle on those biomarkers. So I love the vision that you're painting and it's very aligned.
Yes. Yeah. I think you're spot on. I think it has to be things that people can actually do and take ownership of their health and feel that like sense of responsibility. And then when, their results come back and they're healthier, like you get to feel that and that's your reward and you did the effort and the work in order to get that. You know what I mean? So I think that's really encouraging. And I know something that you talk about is reproductive anxiety, which is so interesting because I feel like that would tie so much into that idea of like, oh my gosh, I'm so anxious. I guess I'm anxious I might not be able to get pregnant, I guess is like a lot of what you probably see. That's kind of what I see. But I'm curious how anxiety kind of shows up in the work that you do.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I say to people is that, reproductive anxiety is real and it's on the rise. And so if you're, sitting there listening to this and you may be feeling anxious about your ability to get pregnant or to have a healthy pregnancy and baby, like you're not alone and it's happening more and more. And the way I describe it is generally speaking, right? Anxiety happens when there's a disconnect between the importance of something and the level of control we feel we have over that thing. And what I find with reproductive anxiety is that it's a high importance thing, meaning building a family for a lot of people is one of the most important things that they will do, but it's being presented as a low control thing, meaning there's not much that you can do about it, except, the advice that you were given, just try, see if it works and, cross your fingers, cross your toes and hope it will happen. Right. And that's a disempowering thing, right? When something is high importance, low control, people feel anxious because they feel like there's nothing that they can do to change the outcome. And I think the message that I would have, and I certainly know it's a message that you've shared as well, there is so much that you can do to optimize your health and to optimize your chances of having a healthy conception and pregnancy. And the old narrative was, oh, there's nothing that we can do. But there's a lot of stuff on the diet, on the lifestyle, on the supplementation front that can be done to optimize your chances, kind of whatever your starting point, wherever you are, whether you're 1 year out or 5 years out, whether you're 23 or 43, right? There is so much that we can do to optimize our fertility.
You're right. I think I read a study that was out of the UK that said about 40% of women of all ages worry about their ability to conceive. And that was very interesting because of all ages, there's women in their 20s who are worried about the ability to conceive. This is not just a problem that, you hit 35, you hit 40 and you're like, oh, I want a baby. Now what? Oh my gosh, I'm so concerned. It's kind of like everyone. And so I guess that's again, because I think the narrative around fertility is so often this reactive thing and infertility and it's seen as such a problem if you can't get pregnant versus like, this is an empowering thing that you can do. And here, let's prepare for it. Kind of like what you're talking about. So I don't know. It's sad. And I went through that as well. Like I honestly, I never called it reproductive anxiety, but now it obviously makes sense of like, that's what it was, is I was definitely concerned I would not be able to get pregnant for 100%. And it was very motivating for me to get really healthy and to like make these specific changes. Like it drove me to be very healthy. Like I started acupuncture a year out. I started like trying to regulate my cycle more and do all of these things because I was like, oh my gosh, what if this is going to be difficult for me? And so I guess it's kind of sad that out of fear is what drove me, but maybe fear is like a really good motivator for people. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, what I think is so cool about that is that you took action from this sense that you had. And I think a lot of people are feeling the thing, but they aren't quite sure what to do about it. And so, I think it's beautiful that you're holding a light up to say, like, here's what I did. And, maybe these things apply to you. Maybe not everything applies to you, but like you're showing a light to other people on what could be possible and what they may be able to adopt. And I think giving people options for what things they can do is the way to alleviate some of that anxiety. And by the way, I'm not speaking from a mental health professional perspective. That is not my realm of expertise. I'm speaking from someone who's worked with, lots and lots and lots of people who are trying to conceive. And I think one of the more challenging things to be told is like, don't worry about it or just wait, right? Like those are very dismissive things. And I hear doctors saying that to people all the time. I hear, well-meaning friends saying that. And I think it's not helpful. And so, right, how do we give people something that they can do so that they can have agency over the process, right? We can't control everything. Of course not. And that's not the goal, but let's control what we can control and try to make progress on the things that are within our domain.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're spot on. I think, looking at it as like more of an empowering decision and actions is really where you want to be. I know you also talk about fertility blockers, and I'm so curious about these. What do you think are the top fertility blockers in today's world?
So the way I like to explain this is that our bodies were designed to conceive, but our modern environment was not, right? And I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing this disconnect and why we're seeing the rise in infertility and in general, people having struggles. And my observation is just as our environment is obesogenic, meaning predisposing us to obesity, if we don't take compensatory action, it is also infernalgenic, right? Which means predisposing us to infertility if we're not taking compensatory action. And so that may be an uncomfortable truth, but I think the data is suggesting that we are moving into this in this realm. And so, okay, well, then what is it that is in our environment that is infertilogenic or, causing challenges or predisposing us to challenges with infertility? I think it's a couple of things. The big ones are, probably not going to be any surprise to any of the listeners to this podcast, but, first is we're eating certainly more food-like substances and less food. And because of that, right, our bodies think that we are starving. So, we're getting calorie density, but in a lot of cases, we're not getting nutrient density. And our body will always prioritize survival over procreation, and it downregulates reproductive function when it thinks it's in either war or famine. And so if our body thinks that we are in famine because we are not getting the appropriate nutrients, it downregulates reproductive function. And, that's happening, in many, many places right now. So I think that's the first, really big one. The second one is environmental chemicals, which sounds like a big bad word. And I just wish this wasn't the case. And certainly, in the US in particular, we're not great at managing our environmental chemicals. I think other countries do a bit better job than we do. But really what's happening is that there are, tens of thousands of environmental chemicals that have come out since, just the 70s. And we're running an epidemiological study on the entire population that no one opted into. And these are coming through air, water, food, personal care products, home care products. And individually, maybe they wouldn't be that big of a deal, but we are literally dousing ourselves with these chemicals all day, every day. And our bodies, yes, were designed to detoxify. They're beautiful and magnificent and resilient. And it's really hard to detoxify at the pace and volume that chemicals are coming into our system right now. And so we really, need to be conscious about things, particularly that are endocrine disrupting chemicals, of which there are, over 1,000 at this point, that do exactly what they sound like. They interfere with our endocrine system, meaning our reproductive signaling, right? And our bodies get confused. And so they overproduce they overproduce our hormones, or they underproduce our hormones. And so when you're trying to conceive, ideally, you don't want a large source of external chemicals or external, like estrogen mimicking chemicals, as an example, in your body, because it interferes with your own hormone cascade. So another one is stress, which, is very nebulous and it's hard to talk about because it's like, oh, well, what am I going to do? Like not stress. But the physiology behind that, is that your stress hormones and your sex hormones are in the same biochemical pathway. And again, as I was saying, your body will always prioritize survival over procreation. So if you are consistently stressed out, I'm talking about chronic stressors, not acute stressors. What happens is your body diverts resources from making your sex hormones to making your stress hormones. And your body doesn't have enough raw materials to get a cycle, never mind, carry a pregnancy. And so the idea here is that we have a lot of stressors coming at us. And there's the physiological stressors like an infection or mold or training for a marathon, right? Over exercising can be a stressor and people don't always realize that. And then of course there's the psychological stressors, the ones that we more think about, which is, not liking a job or having a job that you don't like, or a place that you're living that you really don't like. Those, tend to be chronic stressors. And so the perspective that I give for most people on this one is eliminate any chronic stressor that you possibly can. And for those that you can't eliminate, right? That's not the goal, right? To try to reestablish or rewrite the relationship that you have to that stressor for the time being.
There's so much. I just agree with everything that you said. There's so much there that is so important to touch on and to talk about. The idea of detoxing and working on these toxins that we're exposed to and these chemicals that we're exposed to in our environment is so pivotal. And people, I get, from friends and family mostly, is sometimes I get pushback when I talk about these things it can be so simple. Even when I talk about having a sauna practice, And someone was like, oh, why do you have to go in the sauna? And then I explained, I'm like, well, this is how you sweat. It helps like regulate your hormones. You're in your parasympathetic state, helps with stress, helps with detoxification, blah, blah, blah. It's, it's really hard sometimes to educate people who think that this idea of, detoxification is not needed. There's the argument that, oh, the liver knows how to detoxify. Like, what do you mean? It doesn't need us to help it. It knows what it's doing. It can do its job. But the reality is the world that we now live in, we are so exposed to these foreign chemicals that our body doesn't know what to do with, that we need to support it in different ways, right? Like it's in the plastic, it's in the food that we eat, it's in all of our like cooking pans, like nonstick pans. It's in also like all of the products that we put on our skin, like BPA, BPS, BPB, phthalates, like the list goes on and on, right? So when you kind of start to see how much you're actually exposed to day to day, it's a little scary. So I always recommend to people, if you are on this journey, and honestly, if you're on any health journey, just start small of where you can kind of make these healthier swaps. You don't have to go through your entire house and like change it to like clean products. You can start in like one sector and kind of work your way through. That's what I did. And it can actually make a big difference. And I think the latest, I was just reading this, I think it was last week. I think it's about 200 chemicals are now found in like foreign chemicals, like man-made chemicals are now found in the umbilical cords of babies being born today. So this is not something that people are making up. Like the research backs it up that we're very toxic, like way more toxic than we have ever been. And now then you're pregnant, you're transferring that to your baby, and that's what they're starting their life on. Like this is a not great foundation,
I hear you. And yeah, I mean, it's a heavy topic, or can be a heavy topic. And I know, it can feel overwhelming at times. And I think, this is, what I generally say is like, this is a message of hope, which is our bodies are so resilient. And, once you have this information, you can start to progressively move through maybe like different rooms in your house or your apartment and work through, these chemicals and start to swap them out. Right. And that's why it can take time. And that's why starting early, in the preconception period and giving yourself that gift of time is like the number of deodorants that I went through and like the number of shampoos that I went through to like try to find ones that worked and like didn't, dry my hair out or, like just weren't a mess, right? Like it was a thing. So, giving yourself like grace as you go through this process. And, I would just say like, to the point about, detox, because I think, as you said, like it is actually very misunderstood, which is like, if you live in a cave with a pristine water source and you're meditating multiple hours a day and, then maybe you don't need additional supplementation. Maybe you don't need extra detoxification, but I'm going to guess that most of the people that are listening to this are not in that situation. And so because of that, right, not only does our modern environment with the level of the toxin load that's out there necessitate additional detox, but also stress increases our need for nutrients, right? Which, kind of then means, okay, well, we're taxing our body a lot more. So we have to put a lot more nutrition through it and we have to, give our body what it needs even more profoundly, right? So I think there's that piece of it too.
Toothpaste. We all need it and use it daily. But have you ever read the ingredients of your toothpaste or noticed the FDA poison warning on there? If not, keep on listening for some surprising information that your dentist might not be sharing with you. Fluoride has long been a common ingredient in many commercial toothpastes, hailed for its ability to prevent cavities. However, recent studies have raised concerns about the potential health risks associated with fluoride exposure. These risks include thyroid dysfunction, dental fluorosis, skeletal fluorosis, and potential neurotoxicity. Given these concerns, wellness offers a safer alternative that doesn't compromise our health, yet remains effective. Why choose Wellness Toothpaste? It is founded by wellness mama Katie Wells, and Wellness is dedicated to natural health and uses hydroxyapatite instead of fluoride, a game changer in oral care. Here's why it is a better choice. It's fluoride free, eliminating all the health risks that I just talked about. The natural hydroxyapatite formula strengthens enamel and whitens your teeth. Plus, it's crafted from natural ingredients, gentle on gums, and eco-friendly. I love it. I use it all the time. I love the taste of it. And I don't think I will switch to anything else. So make the switch for yourself today to Wellness Toothpaste. Visit wellness.com and use code biohackingbrittany for 12% off your order. That's wellness spelled WELLNESSE.com. Safeguard your health with wellness because your smile deserves the best. Yeah, I think you're spot on. And I think, yeah, it's like you said, like, if we all lived on our own farm in the middle of nowhere and grew our own food and had our own cows, sure, like you're probably fine. But in today's society, most of us work online or commute to a job. I don't know. It's needed. It really is needed. And I think the discussion around it is getting better. And yeah, I think in general, the discussion on preconception health is getting better. What do you think about nutrition in this space? I know you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but if someone comes to you and say maybe they're vegan or they're eating like the standard American diet, like where do you even begin when it comes to fertility of like, hey, you need more nutrient dense food? Like, how do you even start that discussion?
So I think with my nutritionist hat on, what I usually tell people is, if you're happy with your diet, I'm happy with your diet. If you're happy with your cycles, I'm happy with your cycles. That being said, if you are not, right, if you feel that there is more optimization that you can do, or if you feel like you're entering this chapter where you want to improve your overall health, then I will tell you what the clinical data says, which is pretty clear. And so, and that is that, the most fertility friendly diet is a nutrient dense, balanced diet. And it's probably higher fat than most people would anticipate. Generally, like probably moderate carbohydrate and moderate protein. Of course, there are exceptions. And, some people may deviate from that. But when we think about the dietary paradigm that is most receptive to fertility, that tends to be the one across cultures, across regions. And a lot of people will be surprised to know that, animal products generally is a very important part of a fertility diet because all of your hormones are made from cholesterol, and cholesterol comes from animal products, right? And the data says that anybody that is adopting a vegan or vegetarian diet tends to have lower hormone levels, like full stop in general, right? And so, for people that are adopting certain diets, what I will guide to is like what may have been relevant in a previous period of time may not be relevant for this period of time, right? And you can always change your mind in the future as well, right? So being really present with what your body needs and what your nutrition needs are, generally speaking, we think a lot of time about like diet is about what we take out. But in this period of time, I really like to think about, okay, like diet is, how do we optimize or solve for upside rather than focusing on downside when we think about the, fertility friendly diet.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think focusing on whole foods, real foods, things that are less processed, ultra processed, less packaged is kind of the way to go. And that's what I recommend to people. And I don't necessarily, I think you're right. I think it should be higher fat. I think that is super important for hormones and for balancing hormones. But I try not to recommend any type of like macro management, because then I worry that people are going to get stressed and neurotic about it. And kind of, it could also lead to like eating disorders and things like that. Like you have to be really careful of like how nitpicky you can get about your diet. And I know that I've been there, like so even just this general idea of like whole foods, eating fruits, vegetables, animal proteins, animal fats, cooking from home, like really simple concepts, right? Like typically I would say like the more you eat at home, the healthier as well, right? Like when we eat out a lot, there's so much like oils and things are fried and you don't know what it's contaminated with and all these different things. So really just creating these principles that might seem basic, but if you do it, let's say 90 to 100% every single day, day after day, it makes a big difference. Like it really adds up and you will feel better. You'll look better. Like it helps with symptoms and reduces inflammation, all these other things. So that's kind of my general philosophy that I try to stick to in general, but even more so when it comes to fertility.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, you can also use your body as a barometer. As you were saying, right? Like, these are small things that you're doing each and every day, but they don't end up being small things. And so, right, I find that there can be an intimate relationship between our nutrition and our cycles. And so if we find that, our cycles are not regular or we're missing our cycles, a lot of times that can be related to under eating or over exercising, right? And, if we're missing ovulation or we're having, extreme period pains, these are all indicators of, things that might be going on and with our hormones, and hormones are influenced a lot by our nutrition. And so, we can decode some of our own symptoms to try to understand what might be going on. And certainly, I'd be hard pressed to argue with a whole foods, nutrient dense diet, right? I mean, like that's the baseline of so many different things. And then of course you can layer additional things on top of that. But it's really, really like from a health perspective, it's really, really hard to bypass diet and do all the other health hacks, right? Like, but diet is just so foundational and it has such exponential effects when we think about that as the foundation and start to add other things. But if we skip diet, it's, it can be really hard to, diet, I don't mean like actually taking food out. I mean like the food plan that you're consuming, right? It's just so foundational.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And yeah, even just educating people on that is important and people understanding that. Like, some people, and I've seen this advice is like, take a prenatal and you'll be fine. And it's like, first of all, what's in that prenatal? Is it even the most absorbable form of the nutrients? How much are you even getting from that? And again, that's not going to bypass a crappy diet. Like if you're eating out and you're eating processed food all the time and you take a prenatal and you think you're going to be fine for fertility, like, and a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby, I don't know. Like, I wish it was that simple, but it really isn't anymore. So it's a lot of work, I think, and it's a lot of management, but it's also empowering at the same time. So that's what I recommend. But I'm curious what you think about prenatals in general when people are taking them for fertility. There's this one company I really like. It's called Needed. And I love their stuff. I took it for preconception and fertility. My husband took all of their men's ones because now they have like a full men's line to support sperm quality, which is awesome. What do you think about the role of those type of supplements during the preconception stage?
I love this question. I think it's important. And I think, to what I was saying earlier, it relates back to that, which is, I think that you have to start with diet as foundational, and in a period of time as nutrient intensive as pregnancy can be, that prenatal supplementation is incredibly important. Nutrient needs increase rapidly. And I think there's also, unfortunately, a reality, which is that our soil quality has been compromised. So we're not getting as nutrient dense of foods as we historically have been. And at the same time, right, our stress levels tend to be higher, which means, again, our nutrient needs go up, right? So, and then there's also the digestion and assimilation of nutrients. Just because you're eating something does not mean you're digesting and assimilating it, right? So there's a lot of different pieces for why your diet may not be conferring all of the advantages that you want it to confer. And so prenatal vitamins are a great insurance policy to combat that. And I think it's really important, right? Not all, this is true of all supplements. Like not all supplements are created equal. Finding ones that have the appropriate dosages and forms and are, highly bioavailable, I think is incredibly, incredibly important. And I am a huge fan of supplementation on both the male and the female side. And, I think the other thing, that comes up here that I think people don't always think about as well is you talked a little bit about this yourself. And I just want to amplify this point, which is you can have the best of intentions. And so I think this is why it's really important to prepare, to eat as if you're already pregnant, in the preconception window, to set yourself up. And the same thing, supplement as if you're already pregnant, because sometimes in the first trimester in particular, you may not be feeling as hot. And so your nutrient intake may be a little bit different than you anticipated. And therefore, right, having additional supplementation and additional support can be really helpful when you may not have the same pristine diet than you're used to having, right? So I think people don't always realize that. And so the more backup plans you can have for, days or weeks that, that don't function optimally, the ideally, the better off you're likely to be.
Yep. That is so spot on. That's exactly what happened to me. My first trimester, the second half, I was so sick. I was so nauseous and I ate like crap. Like it was terrible. It was all I could stomach was like bagels, and I'm a nutritionist. Like I know so much better. You know what I mean? But when you're that sick, it was like, what is the food that I can keep down at the time? And it was not even something that I considered when I was doing my preconception cleanse was like, oh, this is kind of going to support me if I get sick. And then, when I went through it, I actually had that reassurance and that sense of relief of like, okay, but you know what? Before I got pregnant, I was super healthy and like my nutrient stores were good. And then second trimester came and I felt wonderful and I was eating great again. So I kind of was like, okay, this happened, but before and after was much healthier. So I'm okay with that. And again, it's kind of like giving yourself grace, but it's such a good point of like, you actually don't know how your pregnancy is going to go. And so what if you're one of those women who is sick for like 8 months or nauseous for 8 months, which does happen or longer, like your whole pregnancy. And then like you're eating crappy, but maybe you've had this like really great foundation during preconception that kind of like mitigates the harmful effects of that. So I think that's like just spot on.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, why I think like the more we can give ourselves time to prepare, the more we can weather the storms of life, right? Because certain periods are going to be easier and gentler and other periods are going to be more turbulent. And so, the more we can focus on doing the best that we can in the periods that we have that agency, then, great. And then, it gives us a little bit of peace of mind if, there are periods of time where, maybe we're not able to operate quite at our best, but, in the grand scheme of things, when it all comes together, it ends up balancing out.
Exactly. If people want to connect with you and potentially test their fertility biomarkers or get your book, how can they do that and where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the book that I wrote is called 9 Months is Not Enough. You had mentioned that. So you can go to the website for that. It's literally 9 Months is Not Enough with the number 9. If you're interested, and it's sold, wherever books are sold around the world. And if you're interested in testing, that's through Poplin. The website for that is GetPoplin, GetPoplin. And we look at 70 different biomarkers. So it's a really comprehensive test. If you're, planning to conceive in the near future, or you're not planning to conceive in the near future, but you kind of want to know what you're working with, we work with people across the spectrum, and it can be a really good way to get baseline. You can have a call with one of our pre-pregnancy educators to review the results. So if that's something that you're interested in, we would love to support you on your journey.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, next time I will definitely be doing that test so that I'm so curious about it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yeah, we have a lot more people that are kind of in postpartum and then starting to think about their next pregnancy, or who are coming to us as well. So it's an interesting additional use case. Yeah, because preconception testing and preconception is relevant whether it's a first pregnancy or a fifth pregnancy. So I love that point. We can't wait to support you when you're ready.
Yeah. It'll be a while from now. I need some time after this baby comes out. Yeah. But it's definitely something I will look into for sure. And I will put that in the show notes and on my website so everyone can find you very easily. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today. I loved this conversation and really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Biohacking with Brittany. If you're interested in finding the show notes or the sponsors for this episode, you can do so on my website, which is biohackingbrittany.com. Remember to follow me on Instagram, where I'm most active. My handle is @biohackingbrittany. And if you're interested in working together and you want to email me directly, you can do that. My email is info@biohackingbrittany.com. And I look forward to hearing from you and having you tune in next week.